Hello, everyone, and welcome to an Equity Guru interview for PredictMedix. Today, I'm really glad to have with me Dr. Samira Rahimi, who will be using the firm's technology for her research. But before we jump into all of that, Dr. Samira, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what your current research interests are?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm delighted to be here today and talk with you about my research and the amazing collaboration that we have with PredictMedix. My name is Samira Rahimi. I'm assistant professor at Family Medicine Department of McGill University, also associated member at Electrical and Computer Engineering Department, as well as affiliated scientist at Lady Davis Institute of Jewish General Hospital. I have a background in both interdisciplinary background in both system engineering as well as family medicine. That's how I am connecting these two worlds together in my current research and using my background in both area in current research that I do. I do research on use of AI and applying AI in primary healthcare setting among different population. I have several ongoing projects. Some of them focuses on cardiovascular context. The other one is on dementia care and mental health care. We have COVID-19 related project ongoing and so on.
Wow, that sounds quite expansive and quite intriguing actually. It's quite rare to academia when an average student or an average person thinks of academia. It's usually very niche and arcane interests that the average person doesn't understand. But you seem to have a lot of cross-disciplinary insight that's generated from your very diverse background. For those of us who don't know, tell us a little bit about family medicine and the current sort of problems in the domain and why they matter and why articulating solutions to those problems is an important task for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, primary healthcare and family medicine is one of the cornerstone of our healthcare system. It is a gateway to our healthcare system and has an important role in our healthcare system since it is a first contact with our patients and it deals with different population from let's say prenatal care till elderly care, so a very wide range of population and a very wide range of disease. It is very important to have in place the system that will be able to collect all of these data, connect all of these data to other relevant data that could be collected through secondary care and so on. And it is important to have the diagnosis system that we will be able to diagnose these patients at timely and as early as possible. And there are like other areas, like other care levels. There are some areas that needs to be improved in primary healthcare as well. For example, the misdiagnosis or mismanagement of care sometimes happen that needs to be improved. The coordination of the care, which is very important and difficult to coordinate the care and continuity of the care that we provide to the rural areas and the population who has a difficulty to have access to care and how we are providing care to them, as well as how we are collecting all of these patients' data and managing all of these data, how well we are using these EMR systems and so on. There are many areas that we need to cover generally in healthcare system, and artificial intelligence and other technology is an opportunity for us if it will be used correctly in this area that could help us to facilitate many aspects mostly related to clinicians' work facilitate their work, as well as have more timely identification and diagnosis of the disease through all of the data that we are collecting.
Wow, that sounds like family medicine has a sort of huge breadth as well as a huge depth to the types of problems that it attempts to tackle and solve. Of these so many different areas, what is your research question? What is your research centered around? What is the sort of intellectual question that drives you to pursue things deeper?
Right. So basically, my team's research focus is on how we can use this AI technology more specifically for clinical decision making and other decision makings that is happening in let's say in the macro level in the healthcare system, in primary healthcare system. How we can use this AI, how we can use this data that is already available for us in the system for the benefit of patients and clinicians in order to guide all of these decisions, how we can build a decision support system that could benefit from all of these data that we do have in our EMR system in order to diagnose different disease. For example, one of my project, we are focusing on early diagnosis of cardiovascular disease among women in a primary healthcare setting, which is a funded research project by CIHR. And what we are trying to do is first understand what are the needs of clinicians and patients in this area, how we need to build our system in a way that it will be more useful, it will be more practical in clinical setting for this population, and then move forward and build a system that will be more understandable and explainable for our clinicians to use it to identify the patients who might have cardiovascular disease in the future.
Wow, that sounds pretty cool. So, from what you're telling me, I get the sense that a lot of the problems have, two verticals that need to be simultaneously tackled. On the one end, you have cold science and cold medicine that we need better solutions to, scientifically better solutions to existing problems. And on the other hand, there is this infrastructure problem that, assuming that the solution exists, how do we ensure that it actually delivers to the end user or actual patients during the time that they most need it? In your opinion, which one? I think both are important, but in your opinion, which one, as currently needs more research work or more development, or which one is a bottleneck, so to speak? What do you think is more important?
I think we need to start from fundamental research in this area in terms of first better understanding what is the need in our clinical settings. I mean, if we develop an AI system without involving these clinicians and patients, how we can assure that this tool will be basically used in this clinical setting and it will have an impact. We are developing this AI technology, this AI system to be able to have an impact, to be able to implement it in clinical settings. So without fundamental research and without involvement of clinicians and patients, I think we are going to miss something, and that's why it's important to start with fundamental research first, and then see how we can develop a system that will answer the clinicians and patients' needs, and then we'll see how we can implement it in real clinical practice.
Wow. I really like that approach, that taking starting from things from a very fundamental first principles sort of view, and that can be really really hard because there is a lot of noise in data and also in the real world that can sort of drive us away from our key goals and outcomes. But if you had to explain to a 5-year old, like, what is the most important problem that you personally care about, what would that be?
In the primary care setting,
Yep. Or any setting in your domain of research. What is a problem or the problem that inspires you, that excites you the most?
Um, well, it's difficult question because there are several ongoing area that I am excited to focus on and work on, and I'm currently working with my team on. One of the areas is that how we can build systems that will be explainable to our clinicians and patients who have little knowledge on AI, and how we can basically build an algorithm that they can use easily in these clinical settings. That is an area that I'm excited about the AI side of the work that I'm doing, how we can build more explainable AI systems. Um, and on the other hand, in terms of the clinical setting, identify disease at early stages, for example, disease such as cardiovascular disease, such as dementia, that many people are suffering from, and how we can have an impact on their life, by early diagnosis, early detection, using such technology that we are, have access to.
Wow, that's really really helpful to understand what really excites you. Um, but outside of that, science and research, especially in domains such as like healthcare and medicine, is often limited by regulation and legislation that is often hard to overcome. I'm actually curious: do you think that there is some piece of legislation out there that is preventing a sort of next revolution, a sort of Copernican revolution in your domain or in medicine? If you could, hypothetically speaking, uh, change a piece of legislation to to research something, would you, or is there something like that?
From the perspective of AI researcher, I could say um, access to data is one of the major issues that I can, see in our clinical setting. Access to high quality data, and like how we are sharing this data, how we are managing this data, how this data even is collected in our clinical setting. Um, we have many noisy data, less quality, and after that, access to these data is very difficult, which is the basics of our work to be able to build an algorithm that will be basically be used in clinical setting. We need to have access to data. So what I would focus on is the access to data, and data sharing aspects that facilitate the work of use of these AI technologies in clinical setting.
Okay, wow. So you really take a more collaborative approach to research and development. Um, moving on from like that very specific point, how do you think AI and specifically this large amounts of, because today we have more data available than ever before across all types of spectrums. How do you think AI and maybe specifically PredictMedix's technology suite will help you develop novel solutions to existing problems or even explore them further?
About, of course, there are depends on different contexts that we are focusing on. For example, one of the area that I'm working with my team is how we can use this AI in mental health care context, and how we can improve mental health care, or let's say screen or early diagnose these mental health problems and mental issues using this technology. Is an area that I could see also a common, ground between our work and PredictMedix work, that we are collaborating to focus on this aspect, as well as COVID-19 related project, that how we can screen patients, how we can use the computer vision and AI in order to screen patients, as early as possible, so we can prevent the spread of the disease to other people, or specifically at high risk people.
Wow. That makes sense. So clearly, the technology has a lot of potential for early stage intervention as well. Um, but moving on from a little bit of science to a little more informal questions, and I was wondering if you have any advice for young researchers out there. But before you answer that, I'm actually curious, what got you excited about research and pursue a career as a scientist? I mean, do you ever think that there is something that let me ask you this actually, what would you be doing if you weren't doing what you're currently doing?
Very good question. Actually, I'm super excited about doing research because one of the areas that I do like about research is the innovation part of it, that you are going to, try innovative ways and find probably new knowledge and then spread the knowledge that you got from your research with other, people, researchers, and the public, and so on. I'm I think if I wasn't doing research, I would have go back again to research. I don't imagine myself other than being researcher, scientist, who is working on in clinical setting and so on. But I can say what motivated me to come to the clinical setting area is that one of the motivation that I got was from the area that one of my loved ones was went through a tough time in the clinical setting in healthcare system, which I decided to improve healthcare system to prevent this happening to other people.
Wow. Wow,
Yeah.
that's really inspiring. That's really really inspiring actually. um, do you have any advice for some of our younger readers and younger researchers out there?
Yeah, well, actually, my main advice is that to follow your passion. For the researchers, I could say in any other areas as well, but in research area specifically, it requires a lot of dedication. It requires a lot of sacrifice. So if you do not have that passion to motivate you and push you through the difficulties, it will be difficult to continue and go on. So I would say my suggestion is that to follow your passion, what you are passionate about, do research on that area. So you will be non-stoppable in your work.
Wow, that's I'm sure our some of our younger audience will appreciate that, and will definitely take that to heart. In closing thoughts, what's next for you? What do you think is going to happen in terms of your vision of the future, so to speak, over the next decade, and how AI will change the technology landscape? And this is more of a macro question because I personally think that we had a lot of rapid developments in science and deep technology from the 40s to the 60s, and maybe from the 40s to the 70s. And then since then, despite the internet and despite the democratization of knowledge and the widespread availability of and the connectedness of the world, there has somewhat been a stagnation uh, in a lot of domains across the world, and a lot of like hard problems. It's like we're always around to the next best sort of like drug, but it's never quite there. We're very close to it. And with AI and machine learning sort of penetrating um, all of our lives, and clearly impacting healthcare and family medicine research, what is your vision of the future over the next decade or two? Do you think we'll still have the types of problems that plague us today? Do you still think that we will have those 10 years from now, or do you think we're so close to it that 15 or 20 years from now, we live in a world where nobody will die of any type of like cardiovascular disease or diabetes or cancer or things like that? I'm just curious what your thoughts are about the future.
A very good question. I need to use my AI algorithm to predict that. It's a tough question to answer, honestly, because it's depends on many variables. It depends on many actions that we must take at this stage in order to reach to that level in the future that will be able to practically use these AI tools in clinical settings for early detection or the early diagnosis of disease. Um, but I would say if everything will be perfect, if the aspects related to data will be solved, and on the other hand, the area related to the development of AI algorithm and the collaboration between AI experts, clinicians, and researchers, and so on, it continues to grow. I would say we can have quite a better healthcare system for sure by using this AI tools in clinical practice. It might reach to a level that will be able to reduce the mortality of many of disease that depends on early detection and early diagnosis, and find better treatments and personalized approaches for patients, for their treatments, for their drugs, and so on. And even in healthcare setting, like in the hospital setting, we can manage many aspects that put a lot of burden and pressure to our clinicians, for example, in terms of the scheduling, in terms of prioritization of the patients, and so on. That lots of things that they need to do manually, but it could be easily facilitated by AI and the tools that we can integrate in the hospitals.
Wow, that's actually quite optimistic. Gives me hope. But actually, it actually makes me want to ask another question before we close, which is, what problem do you think AI won't solve? What is some a problem in medicine or in family medicine that you think is a problem so fundamental that it needs a sort of a quantum sort of revolution, a next leap in deep deep domain knowledge that will allow us to solve it, where in other words, what do you think are the, so to speak, limits of AI, if any? What do you think are the types of problems that technology may help us find direction, but it won't definitely not be able to help us reach the destination that we want to reach?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Actually, I could say that the AI for sure has its own limitation. It is very powerful in terms of computation and so on. But when it comes to the intuitions and emotions, we cannot rely on AI and AI tools for sure in terms of identifying or catching, let's say, what is the emotion of the patient in this scenario and so on. And family medicine is more about the relationships that the doctor have with patients, and building this relationship between patient and clinicians. And I would say that I don't think AI will would, be involved in it. I don't think the it is the right approach to involve AI in this interrupt this relationship between clinicians and patients, and all of these interactions between clinicians and patients, because it's very important part of the any type of care, including primary care, that we keep this patient clinician relationship alive. And so I think that that is an area that we need to um, handle with a more human intelligence than artificial intelligence.
Wow, that's a great line. I'm gonna quote you on that one. Dr. Samira, thank you so much for taking the time out for the interview, and we'll be sure to follow up with you with another one when you've had a chance to play around with some of PredictMedix's technology suite. and how you feel about its potential to solve some problems that you're currently researching about.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Have a great
All right.
evening.
Thank you so much.